Good evening, welcome to MUFON Los Angeles. My name is Steve Murillo. I am the State Section Director for MUFON LA. We have an excellent presentation for you all this evening. Nadine Lalich. For 20 years, Nadine's professional life included work in the legal field as a project coordinator. Throughout her life, she has also maintained a pervasive interest in the study of psychology and various techniques for recovery from addictive substances, behaviors, and emotional trauma. Over a period of 10 years, she mentored several hundred individuals in various recovery programs, created and facilitated self-discovery, goal-setting, and esteem-building workshops and writing groups, and produced a line of inspirational children's items nationally distributed. She has explored spiritual expansion, physical healing, accelerated mental functioning through meditation, sound and light machines, sensory deprivation tanks, neurolinguistics, and subliminal programming, and the list goes on. Within the framework of a peaceful and satisfying life, Nadine carried a secret hidden from everyone in her life except for one lifelong friend. The truth was that for many years, some kind of extraordinary contact had been taking place with what appeared to be non-human entities. In early 2005, after a particularly prolific period of contact, Nadine's fear of revealing the secret fell away, and a steely determination to investigate and stop the bizarre infringement took its place. She joined MUFON, where she soon met Barbara Lamb, a researcher with whom she shared her story and eventually conducted research together and co-authored the book Alien Experiences, 25 Cases of Abduction. Nadine has written 2 books, Alien Experiences and also The Dream of Becoming. She has appeared on the Discovery Channel's 2007 television program Best Evidence, Alien Abduction, on the Discovery Health Channel's 2000 television program Alternatives to Healing. She's been a guest on a number of radio shows, including Paranormal Radio and A Global Focus. She has also been a guest panel speaker on alien abduction at the Mutual UFO Network in Orange County in 2007-2008, and she is a board member of the Journal of Abduction Research, JAR. She has written articles for the magazine. Tonight's going to be a great presentation, and I've been looking forward to this. Would you guys all put your hands together and welcome Nadine Lalich. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. First of all, I'm very grateful to be here tonight. I appreciate the invitation and opportunity to talk about this subject. Which is a subject that sort of I've been dragged into kicking and screaming. I use the term skeptical here. I had been a skeptical experiencer. First of all, a little bit about me is that I'd prefer that this wasn't happening to me. This is not something that I have enjoyed. I've come to live with it. I'm relatively comfortable with it now. By standing up, speaking about it, just making a choice to research it, catalog it, write the book, I'm finding a lot of peace, and at least I'm turning this experience into something positive for myself. I use the term skeptical because I'm a kind of a person, you know, Steve mentioned that I work in the legal field, and I tend to be more analytical than not. I'm comfortable with facts, things that you can prove, mathematics and geometry, and those were types of subjects growing up I loved. I love science. This is a challenge for me, particularly with my nature, because this is not something that I can't make it black and white. I can't prove it to you. Certainly there's bits and pieces of evidence that come along here and there with experiencers. I'm much more anxious to find something really tangible, which I have not yet been able to do. Anyway, I want to tell you a little bit about what I want to go over tonight. Let's see here. Okay. I want to give you a little bit about my background and how I look at this. Originally, I'd had about 14 years I kept this quiet and kept this under wraps. I'd only had let one friend know of what was going on with me. She had been present in my first conscious experience in June of 1991, and we've been friends for about 35, 40 years. And I kept it very hush-hush because I had a lot of just, I guess basically I really wanted to look good, and I was very afraid of this. I was trying to find some other reasonable explanation, and in 14 years of hiding it, I couldn't. So I want to talk a little bit about my experiences in a general way. A couple of experiences I want to share with you tonight. My first conscious one, and another one that took place after the death of my father. Then I'll give you a few little outlines of some other rather unique things that have happened to me in contact. I'd like to go over some of the physical, emotional, and just overall general observations that I've noted in these experiences. Then I have been given an impression as to what this is all about. Overall, why the contact, why the preparation of experiencers and abductees. I'd like to talk about that. And also for anybody who's had anomalous experiences. This was not an easy thing for me to come to terms with. It was also mentioned earlier when he was reading a little bit about my past. I have worked quite a bit for many, many years. I worked with the homeless. I had a homeless organization. I worked down in downtown LA with the homeless. I worked with in addiction field for a long time. The Dream of Becoming book was aimed at families dealing with addiction that I wrote some years ago. What that did for me was it gave me the years of working in that gave me an opportunity to really study psychology and kind of come to understand human nature and the different states that we are prone to, and that's been very helpful once I stepped out and started working with this. But anyway, I'd like to talk later on a little bit about how you come to terms with this and how I did the tools that I used to make peace with myself and how to face this thing. First of all, in general, again, this thing has been going on for me at this point. 2004, spring of 2004 is when I first made the decision. My mother had passed away, and over the death of both of my parents and other emotional times in my life, there has been a lot of activity and take place. After she passed away in January of 2004, it was sort of like I had some time on my hands. I've been caretaking my mother for quite some time with Alzheimer's, and I made a decision. It was time to face this. It was time to really, take a look at it and stop being a victim to it, which is pretty much what I felt like I was. So that at that point it was 14, 15 years, and then since then, about a year later, I was involved with Barbara Lamb. I met her, I came and joined MUFON, I started investigating, met Barbara. She was very kind, she was really, really wonderful person for me to talk to, because I remember my first appointment with her, going to see her. Now, mind you, this was the only second person I had ever talked to about this. There had only been one, which was my friend, and throughout the years as these experiences continued, I did talk to my friend about this. But in this instance, with Barbara, what was really wonderful is that when I spent my time with her, it was hard for me to let this out and talk about it, and I did not want to hear anything about UFOs or aliens, or forget it. That had not ever been a focus of mine. My focus growing up, the most exposure I had, I did see E.T., I read some science fiction short stories, Isaac Asimov when I was a teenager, but there certainly was no exposure in any way to this phenomenon, to UFOs, to this arena at all. I had a mild interest at best. So when I went to see Barbara, because Barbara was also not just a researcher, Barbara also being a psychotherapist. I had done therapy many years before, and working on family issues, and that was something I was comfortable with. I was hoping, when I talked to Barbara, that she was going to give me some reasonable explanation. This was going to be some type of mental condition, some type of periodic hallucination, some type of dream state, something. She was going to give me something. There's going to be a textbook name for whatever this was. I was hoping. But of course, deep down, like our truth lies within us, and deep down I knew that something quite extraordinary had been happening to me, but I didn't want to talk about it. It took a few sessions of meeting her, and I cried, ranted, raved, was very angry, very, very angry about it, because I saw it as a terrible intrusion into my life. Anyway, going back to June of 1991, prior to that experience, I had no conscious recollection that there had been any contact that ever happened in my life. Never existed. On this particular occasion, I went to Sedona, Arizona. I'd always wanted to go there, and I went with this friend, Pamela. We'd been friends at that point probably, 25 years. We took a van, we drove there. We were going to go camping in some of the more remote areas, do a lot of hiking, do some canoeing. We pulled off the road our first night just on the edge of Sedona in a very remote area, and it was one of those types of campgrounds where there's really no facilities other than markers where you can pull your car in, you drop a little packet in or something to spend the night for a couple dollars, and there was also there's a little outhouse in the back, no running water or anything like that. Nobody was around for miles. We pulled in at dusk, we set up, and no one was in the area, and that is my first experience that night of being conscious and awake when the back of the van opened up and I was removed from the van. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. Since that time, there has been consciously now, there could be up to 12 contacts a year that I'm aware of. There may be other things going on that I'm not aware of. The longest duration was probably about 6 months of no conscious recollection. I keep for many years I kept journaled, and I keep a journal at my nightstand, and I write everything. After my experiences, I tend to write for a good solid hour, and I mean just huge amounts of material come out. I have noticed also that after menopause, there's been changes in the way that these events take place, which is a very interesting thing. I also want to preface that I prefer using the term myself experiencer. I prefer the term contact. That is certainly no reflection on those people that believe they have been physically abducted. That is absolutely, to me, a viable possibility. But to me, this whole circumstance is a possibility, a hypothesis at best. That's why I'm skeptical, because there's not facts, something I can grab onto. So for me, a lot more information, and certainly something a lot more substantial has to come along before I can tell you what I think is exactly happening. At this point where I'm at, I do believe there is some type of intelligent contact with non-human entities taking place. Is it taking place through some subconscious interaction, through a dream state, through is there a combination of physical? Is there such a thing? And these are all the areas that I've considered. Is it indeed a possibility that in some spiritual areas and studies they believe that, with the soul and that we have an astral body, can this astral body be removed from the body? So there's a lot of possibilities, but I do want to stress that to me these are just possibilities. This information that I'll share with you tonight is, to me particularly, I will tell you truthfully from my heart what I have seen, what I have experienced, and it is my genuine truth. I cannot prove it. And I also cannot put a lot of labels on what it is. As I moved into this work, first of all, one of the things that's really important is that with very little exposure to anything to do with UFOs, abduction, I began to put my material down. I began to catalog it. I went through years and years of journals. going through them, writing them down, or putting everything into a big, massive pile of material. I took drawings that I'd originally done during, experiences, and I expanded them and finished those drawings. But the most important thing is that as I began to do this, I took about a year. And in that year, I went over all of my material and my experiences. I also did a half a dozen regressions. Now, Barbara Lamb is a wonderful therapist and does hypnotic regression. I don't know a lot about that. I was open-minded to try it. I understand a lot of experiencers or abductees that is primarily where they get their information. That is not the case with me. I have an amazing amount of recall. Now, I don't know how distorted that may or may not be. I have sort of broken my experiences down and my recollections into about 4 different levels of recollection and recalling. And depending where that particular experience lies and the state, the condition that I believe I was in at the time, that is what gives me confidence in it. In other words, if it mirrors a typical dream state, I have less confidence. The more my experiences feel as though I literally walked out of the other room, the more that those memories and the way that my mind draws those memories out and offers them to me, the more that it is like reality as we know it, three-dimensional, the more I trust it. Because some of these are so utterly remarkable that it is though I have just walked out of this room into the hallway and come back again. That's the way the information is stored in my mind. It isn't hazy, it isn't sleepy, it isn't difficult to recall, it's vivid and it's clear. So depending on, I've broken it down for myself to about 4 different types of recall, and depending how it is stored in my mind, that's the way that I pay particular attention to it. The more vivid it is, the more like three-dimensional recall in real life, waking life, I tend to pay a little more attention to it. So anyway, what I share with you tonight is my observations, my recollections in drawings, in my stories, to the best of my ability. All I can say is that to the best of my ability, my perception, I've cataloged these and told the truth of it. That does not mean to say, again, that there cannot be some distortion in memory. There very well could be. And depending how these life forms, whether they are astral, psychic, physical, whatever is happening here, they also have the ability to distort things for you. They give you screen memories. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. There's a long, long, long way to go before I think we could possibly say with any absolute clarity of what's going on here. And also another thing I think is very important to point out is that I'm a newcomer. 5 years stepping into this arena, looking at it, researching it, and after I did all of my work, it's only then that I went and looked at the other 24 cases. I actually went over 100 cases of Barbara's. I reviewed all of the files and the material, and we chose 24 of those. And that was after my material was cataloged, because I did not want to contaminate my own personal experience by taking in any other information. So I think that's very important to see that whatever did come out of me came only from me. My background again is I've spent 25 years in law, and I had my own company. I wore 20 different hats of organizing and working with people and manufacturing. I manufactured a line of goods. I certainly have a very strong creative side, but I have a very, very strong analytical, practical side to me, which I'm grateful for because it grounds me out in this particular work. I also have a pretty grounded emotional nature. I'm not prone to drama and hysteria. Although I've had my moments, certainly, when I was telling my story and starting out, it was very challenging for me. And it definitely was not an easy thing for me to cope with. So fact gathering, analysis, I did a number of years working with attorneys in trial preparation and analyzing information. A lot of what that was worked with software programs called concordance. There were several of them, and you would take piles of information and read documents and logs and evaluate photographs, and you would put that into material and information that could be pulled up at trial by the attorneys. Again, looking at information, categorizing it, and I think that's been very helpful to me, because when these things come, I don't take it at surface. I look at these things, and really, as I start to write down what happened, I'm analyzing at the same time. I don't just assume an apparition is an apparition. I want to see, was it projected from someplace else in the space, in the area? Were they trying to manipulate me at an emotional level? Was this a screen thing? Did it appear to be real? Was it tangible? Were there other senses that I had at the time? Did I smell anything? Did I feel anything? So I ask a lot of questions now, and I've been able to maintain a reasonable degree of awareness through, at least certainly through the initial portions of these experiences. It's very challenging to try to keep your perception there, because they certainly, whatever is happening, they seriously impact your neural functioning. Anyway, one of the other things with my past and some of the things I worked with, which was very interesting, is that I came from a very challenging background as a child, and one of the things that later on, as I was in this for a while, they will say sometimes that people that have childhood abuse issues and things, I've heard certain persons say that if you have abuse issues or any kind of childhood dysfunctional issues in your family, that's causing you to manifest aliens, okay? Personally, having thoroughly examined that and having worked with a lot of people with serious trauma through the years, and I did do a lot of seminars here in the Valley 15, 20 years ago, working on post-traumatic stress syndrome. I had recovered from it with family issues, and I worked in a lot of 12-step programs with people. One of the things that did is that having that background, sometimes when you go through those kinds of things, you learn what something is not. So having the background and looking at all the different states of stress and trauma, then the people that I've worked with, that I myself personally, I recovered from as a child, when I look at these things and I take that information into the present time with these particular experiences, what it shows me is what this is not. Now mind you, I'm a person who I'm looking for this not to be real. So for me, I've had to try to fight to find middle ground, because you cannot analyze something if you're prejudiced to the left or the right. Somebody came up the other day, and one of the other meetings last week, and he was very adamant about this not being a reality, and how did I feel about him telling me that. And I told him basically, I'm looking for middle ground. I want to stand in a place where I'm willing to accept that it is going on or that it's not. And that's the best place to be, with no agenda, trying to keep your personal agenda out of it, although that's not easy. So a lot of what's happened is that with the things that I've done in the past is I also am just an amateur at all of this, but I certainly have looked at a variety of mental and psychological conditions that the human condition is prone to. And I cannot, honestly, at this point in time, I cannot identify the things that I've gone through in this contact and these experiences with these anomalous beings. I cannot identify it as anything else that I've experienced in psychology at large, as I have looked at addiction issues or family issues or post-traumatic stress. Well, certainly there's post-traumatic stress from these kinds of things, but it doesn't fit for me. I have not found a way to fit this into the typical emotional and mental states that I'm familiar with. Anyway, so that's a very interesting fact for me. So that kind of leaves me floating. Then what is this? What is this? If this is not schizophrenia, if this is not hallucinations, if this is not some effect from, if this is not bipolar disorder, if this is not a sleep disorder, what is it? You know, so a lot of this, I think at best, is finding out what it is not. And that eliminates a lot. What it is right now, I can't tell you. But something has happened to me. Back to Sedona. We went on the trip. I was in a Toyota van, and we had pulled into this campground, and we had a lot of very nice camping equipment. We had food. She had her personal belongings. I had mine. We were not at all concerned about leaving our stuff out. We set up our camp. We were sleeping in this van. We put our sleeping bags in the back of this van, and probably, I don't know, it was dusk when we set up, and I had a creepy feeling. I had one of those very strange feelings we were being watched for some reason. I don't know why. And I remarked to my friend Pamela, I felt somebody was watching, and we looked in the area. There was nobody around. There were no cars for miles. We were it. And I went to bed first. She stayed up by the campfire, and she came in. I remember when she came in, she laid down in her sleeping bag next to me. We both drifted off to sleep. My next conscious awareness is the light goes on in the van. And when the light goes on, the back gate swings open. Toyota was one that it raised upward. It raised upward, and I was very startled, half sitting up, and I saw something that was going to forever change my life. And I saw a pasty kind of gray hand come at me with 3 fingers and a thumb. I don't think in my entire life I ever experienced anything that was so shocking, or there was not a place for me to put this in my mind at the time. It was sheer terror. The next I knew is I felt myself pulled out. It was very dark outside, and my eyes obviously hadn't adjusted to the light. The light had come on. My friend stayed sound asleep. And on each side of me, I saw 2 small beings like this. In front of me, there was another tall, very tall figure that I could not look at. I was not able to raise my head to look up. I've come to understand later on that when other experiences have happened, and there is a possibility that they are able to keep us from looking at them. It's amazing the amount of control that can be that we can be subjected to in these experiences. Anyway, my memory of this is I've got one of these on each side of me, very small, 3.5 feet tall. I'm definitely just terror, and I can't find a place in my mind for it. And I am raised up off the ground about 6 inches. I notice that my feet are up off the ground. I look around, I can barely turn my head. I look around and I see a number of other of these faces in the distance. And I begin to move. And as I move, no one's touching me, but they're holding their hands underneath. There's one on each side, and they have their hand underneath, cupped underneath my hands. And there's some sort of force field or energy that has raised me up about 6 inches, and we're scooting over the ground. Now, my memory of this is limited initially. This is one of the experiences that I did do a regression on later on with Barbara. And my conscious recall of this was that we scooted across the ground, and all that I could see is there was a path in the woods, and I could see ahead of me, and I saw a glowing, very bright, very brilliant glowing light. The other thing that I noted is that something kept hitting my face. Later on, after years later, when I did some regression work, a couple on this, what it came to reveal is that as we were going through the woods, there were actually branches from the tree trees that were hitting my face that were not hitting these little companions of mine because they were below the level. When we got through the clearing, this is what I saw. I saw a ship, a saucer-type ship that was glowing very brilliantly. I won't go a lot into this right now because there's a lot of material I'd rather go into, but this particular experience did involve a lot of physical examinations. This particular entity you see standing here, now what's interesting here is that I did all of these drawings before I ever saw anybody's drawings. Even to this day, I have not read any books at all because I do not want to be picking up other information. I have watched a couple of programs on TV, but I have not looked at people's drawings. I have not picked up books. But it's quite remarkable that when I start doing these drawings, some of the things I've done, that people will say, I've seen that, I've seen that, I've seen that. They go to my website and I get letters and notes all the time that people remark, it's the exact same thing they've seen. After the work was done, and so this is referred to, this was a very clinical type of being, very detached, almost with a disdain for human beings. I really felt in the presence, this person stood in, this being stood in the background and was some type of supervising what was going on as the examinations and thing were proceeding. But they didn't directly interact. They held something in their hand like that, and very pasty white, probably close to 7 feet tall, far in the background observing without any interaction directly. Anyway, in this experience, later on, the thing that was important to me too is that the few regressions that I have done, the half a dozen that I have done, did not conflict with my information. And not knowing how I felt about the regression work, I was very pleased to see that it actually was a helpful tool for helping to bring additional information. It has clarified some of the experiences for me, and there's been no contradictions whatsoever, which I think is very interesting. This experience, after this happened, when I was returned to the van, I wasn't walked back. I just was, when I was like sort of, like a lot of these returns are, they're sort of a whoosh, and boom, you find yourself hitting the ground hard, and I was sitting up in the van on top of my sleeping bag, and I was definitely crying and very traumatized, and just grasping desperately inside myself, trying to identify what had happened to me. And I was absolutely certain they were coming back. I was very, very frightened. I was unable to wake my friend up for about 3.5 hours. Nothing woke her up. Shook her, tried to talk to her. I could not wake her out of this incredibly deep sleep she was in. This experience was so traumatizing. We got up the next day, and it was about 5 o'clock. I just looked out the window until she finally arose around 5 o'clock, went outside. I told her what had happened. She was very sensitive to all of it. She has an open mind. She was, at that point, much farther down the road in these kinds of things. She was more accepting of it than I was by far. The only thing that really, the real topper on this was that when we went outside, all of my belongings were gone. All of hers were there, all of our food, the camping equipment, lanterns, everything was there. Nothing had been touched, but every single thing of mine was gone that had been there. All of my clothing, personal items, gone. And we searched far and wide in the area, and I was praying that some animal came and decided my personal belongings were, on the list, but we couldn't find anything ever. And we cut the vacation short, and I came back because I couldn't cope. After this experience, this one stayed with me. This is the beginning, and before I really began to start having a wide variety of experiences. But again, 14, 15 years, nobody knew. This is another particularly interesting experience. Now, this is years later. This is actually It's 2003. It's 2000. I don't know. I've got 2003 at the top there. It's actually February 23rd, 2000. So that's a error on the top there. Anyway, this is a little note from my journal. On this particular occasion, I had gone back to my parents' house. My father had just passed away. I went to close up the house. My mother had Alzheimer's. I was bringing her back to California. This is in Michigan. And that night I was in the house by myself. And it's interesting, a lot of this stuff, there seems to be a preoccupation by some of these beings with our emotional state, actually testing and setting up circumstances and scenes to see how we act. It's not at all unlike what we do with animals on our planet, how we test them and train them and observe them. It's extremely similar. It really is. So this is just part of the journal entry of that night. I had another weird experience. The sky was dark. I was standing outside, and this is the journal entry of that night before the experience happened. I look up in the sky and see these crafts overhead. And I knew they were coming again. Their formation was something incredible. There was a mothership with a number of smaller ones following behind in formation. What you see here on the left is when I have an experience, I try to put as much information as I can to my journal. I draw as fast as I can because there's so much information I don't want to miss it. So initially I will get all the sketches done here, and then later on I will come back because I don't want to lose it. So I put as much as I possibly can down in notes to myself. That's what you're seeing on the left, these two pieces here. What you're seeing on the right is my final depiction. Once I have time to spend with it, now I can tell you and show you in this way what happened. In this particular experience, I found myself inside of a craft. When I awoke from this experience, this was a lot of times with these experiences, there's missing time for me. I come to in a different location. Before an experience happens, there is an intense, it could be in the middle of the day, I could be standing upright like this, and you are hit with such an intense, overwhelming desire to become unconscious, to fall asleep. It's just an amazing thing, and you cannot stop it when it happens. You can be standing up when it can happen, and you're going to go down. I mean, it's a pretty intense thing when it happens. And so when I was returned in this experience, it appeared, by this particular experience, it appeared that I was taken aboard a craft. Again, back to this is being a hypothesis. It appears. There's no facts to prove that. But in this instance, I found myself in a very large, round metal room. And on this particular experience, there was a great deal of testing going on. And what happened here at the table, what you're seeing here is this table was the room. The light in these experiences is very interesting because when you're inside these things that appear to be like crafts, the lighting is everywhere. It's very subdued, it's not direct, and you can never tell where it's coming from. There was a light in the room itself, a misty light, and there was a light that actually emanated from this table. The table had a pedestal to it. This was some type of either a learning device or some type of programming that was there. They were either programming my mind or they were teaching me something. I'm not sure. These were tall cylindrical vases, sort of like. They had very interesting etchings on the side that somewhat geometrical. Inside they were filled to varying degrees with a clear fluid. He manipulated them somehow, and there were actually sounds that came out of them also. As I sat there, I was supposed to watch these things. There was some interaction taking place, and at the same time there was tremendous pain that I felt in my back, and I realized I couldn't move. Every time I would try to pull forward here, I was attached. And there was one of the shorter gray beings in the back, as I recall, doing something with my spine. I don't know what it was, but that's the best I could do to depict it. This particular being you're seeing here is referred to, I understand, because later on, one of the most remarkable things is when you put your information down, and you don't have any prior reference. Then later on you go and you read material, and you're looking at material that's worldwide. For example, Barbara Lamb has interviewed people in various countries, different circumstances, different cultures, and you start to look at these files, and then I read a file that goes back 10, 15 years from a man in Puerto Rico, and he's describing what I've drawn here. He's describing the mannerisms or the equipment that I've seen. How can that be? That was startling to me. That was an amazing thing for me, to start to see and read these cases that correlated with my own. How could that be? I never read that information. So that was a really shocking awakening for me also, that this was, whatever this phenomena is, that it is indeed worldwide. And that really also got my attention in seeing that, I've been dragged into this kicking and screaming, but this is obviously really worthwhile for me to spend my time and research on, because something's going on here. Even if it is some type of mass psychological connection happening worldwide, I still would like to know what that is. What is it? So anyway, what you see there is my original drawing, and then you see later on how I depicted it. That particular being is referred to as insectoid. It is my, certainly the most, I don't know, strangely enough, there's almost a strange affection that I have for it. There's only one of those that I've ever seen, ever, but it has repeatedly shown up in my experiences over the years. Seems to be some type of instructor and teacher, and on instances, certain instances have happened where it's almost been a sense of pride that this being has demonstrated towards me in my the work that I've done with this being. There is much more of a sensitivity and an affinity and some degree of emotional dimension to this particular being. Very advanced, very, very intelligent, but not cold, not withdrawn. There is some sensitivity there. So if there was a favorite, that would be my favorite, strangely enough. On the bottom, what you see here is a little drawing. I never finished the drawing on this one, but on the bottom, this particular is... it was very interesting in this experience. Also, there was a glass set in front of me. It was a glass case that was perhaps 2.5 inches across. They set it down in front of me. When I looked into it, it had a concave kind of lid to it, and it appeared that what was inside was perhaps an inch long. I thought it was a centipede, an insect, and that they wanted me to eat it, is what I thought. I was very appalled when I saw this thing. When the lid came off of it, I realized the lid was actually a magnifier that took a very tiny object, perhaps an 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, and blew it up so you could see it. It looked ultimately like a very teeny tiny comb with, like a comb would look very small, and that it was some type of an implant, I was led to believe. A couple other things happened in this particular encounter that were really intriguing, and this is when I began to be exposed to different types of what appeared to be programming or learning technology. What you see on the left again this is what I refer to as symbol boxes, and these symbol boxes are somewhat geometric, but they're very pointy also, and this box was maybe 12 inches long, 6 inches wide, 1 inch deep, and very thin sheets that looked almost like they were made of acrylic sheets, thin plastic sheets. It also had an interesting light that emanated from it somewhere, a bluish white light. Could not tell where it came from. But there were these symbols. Basically, I was to sit there, and I was at that same table. I was to sit there, and I was to lift these sheets and just stare at them. In the center of each of these sheets was a very, very thin membrane or film that was kind of shiny, had a mother-of-pearl tint to it. And the impression that I had with this was that this would be a type of information box that I don't know how information would be transferred from it, but it was as though we have, like we would have a computer chip, that those films contained information. Inside of each of theirs, there was some stored information there that I was to absorb or learn by looking at this. Had an interesting conversation. All of the interaction in these contacts which may or may not be physical abductions, I don't know. But in all of these contacts, it is all telepathy. There's only been one species that I was exposed to years later. For many years, these first 14, 15 years, I only saw 3 types of beings. Once I stood up and started talking about this, I wrote the book, I got involved, went to MUFON meetings, all of a sudden there was another 4 that showed up. Very interesting. Activity changed when I stood up and started talking about this. Anyway, in this particular one was interesting because it was a telepathic interaction, talk about God, because I had dropped down to my knees when this had began, this particular experience, and I was still having a lot of fear. This is before I had, I had gone to Barbara and I had started to talk about this, so I still had a tremendous amount of shock and terror. And I dropped to my knees and I kept saying, "Oh God, oh God, oh Jesus, oh God." And their response was to it was almost a sense of amusement, although they're not emotional. There was the white being was there. There were several grays there, and it was sort of their explanation about what God was. That God was something that we were a part of, and that as we expanded in our consciousness, God expanded. That we were a part of it. That energy was inside of us, and there was actually a conversation of sorts about that. Also, in this experience, it was very interesting. A lot of times what they have done is they show on some type of a screen. It's somewhat like we would look at this. You can't see anything around the edge of it. It appeared to be maybe half the size of this screen. They're up sort of floating in the blackness. You can see these things, and they flash images on them that they want you to look at and see. A lot of these images are of destruction of the planet, of chaos and burning buildings and collapse of society. They show you these things. And one of the things in this particular instance, what they showed is they were trying to convey to me the idea that I was having the impression that their interaction with us, their ability to control our mental processes, I was thinking was primarily more of a telepathic type of control. I had actually experienced something, and I later read about, called mind scan, where the Greys will put their eyes right next to you, and they're able to exert or some type of entrance into your neural pathways and disrupt it somehow. I mean, it's interesting too, because let's face it, the brain is, and our body, we're really electromagnetic circuits is what we are. You know, that's how they check our heart and our brain with EEGs. So the idea that our neural pathways could be somehow interrupted by an outside force really isn't such a strange idea at all, actually, when you understand how that works. But anyway, in this case, what they were suggesting is they showed me this picture on the screen of a city that appeared to be out in the desert, and it looked to me like it was a place like Las Vegas, and they showed a capsule coming down. And what they were conveying to me is that not only are they able to control us through some type of mind scan or telepathy, that they actually use mechanical devices to do this on a large scale, that they have a capability to affect the mental processes of a whole city, for example. They showed me this thing come down, and what you're seeing is a section of what it would look like as it moved into the earth. It's a capsule, and it hits the ground, it opens up with arms, it spins, goes underground a few hundred feet nearby from a city, creating some type of force, electrical magnetic force perhaps, that actually can affect the people living in the nearby city, a large metropolitan area, that they could in some way impact our mental processes. That was a very scary possibility. I really was really amazed by that particular thing. Some of the other scenes and things that I've seen, and these are not easy for me even to talk about, but again, these are conscious recollections that I have. These are stored in my mind when I retrieve my memories. They are stored in my mind in a way that is quite unlike dream time, very unlike dream time. Most of these memories are quite tangible. There are some of them I even smell. I have a sense of smell. So anyway, I have one experience, particular, a recollection of sitting at a table, a large table that was sort of like a conference table in a room with a variety of beings sitting there, and also a number of humans were sitting there in a semi-unconscious state. I was there with that insectoid being, was there across from me, and there was some type of examination going on with me and others, but just one at a time, and it was a psychological and emotional examination taking place. It was as though it was a demonstration almost of me with this being in front of these others. I have been several times, had experiences of being in what appeared to be underground caverns. Several times I have been in that situation with the being that appears to be a reptoid type being, reptilian type being, very fierce, very frightening, very dangerous appearing. And I found myself walking through caverns with rock, almost as though it's carved out of rock. One of the most fascinating ones happened recently in the spring that was unlike anything that had ever happened to me before. And in this case, I found myself coming down. Some of these, by the way, some of these experiences are the way that you're introduced into the experience and the way you're returned can vary. There has been, for example, I recall I was working at a law firm and I had left for lunch. I had an hour. I was going to do an errand. And in that instance, I lost 2 hours, and I found myself on the opposite side of town. I recall driving my car, and I felt the presence. As time has gone on, I have come to be more sensitive to when I feel like something's going to happen to me. I can feel I'm being watched. I can feel the presence. This was in the daytime, in the summertime in Irvine, and I had left for lunch. And I got back 2 hours later, and I was in a different part of town. I have no memory recollection of this particular one that happened in the daytime, but it was indeed missing time. So sometimes when you're returned, I mean, I have a recollection of an actual beam of light coming into my bedroom on several occasions. I have had many instances, most instances of return have been with me wide awake, sitting or standing up, and I feel as though I've been dropped from somewhere or something, and I hit hard. And there's even a whoosh sound when I'm there, and there I am. I'm not sleeping. Although I have had some dreamlike experiences where I am in bed and sleeping, in these instances I have that's not been the case. I've been sitting up, been on the couch, sitting on the edge of the bed, but I'm fully up when these things terminate at the end. Anyway, this particular one was really interesting that happened in the spring of this year, and that's that I found myself in an underground facility, and there was none of the normal entrance and exits that I'm accustomed to. There was an elevator. This looked like a man-made structure, and I saw only human beings here. That's what was startling. There was only human beings. And although I didn't see a military outfit per se, the whole manner of the people that were down there was a military fashion type installation. And when you came down, it was a gigantic cavern, and there were elevators that had been carved out that came down, and I came down an elevator with a man that appeared to be 35 years old, and that's where my consciousness came to. I found myself riding down suddenly. As we got down there, there was in the center of this humongous carved-out structure under the ground a huge craft being worked on with many people. Could have been 100 people there in overalls. Some people wore overalls down there where I could look at them working on this craft. It was a very unusual-looking craft, somewhat human, somewhat alien kind of craft, but huge. And there were scaffolds all around it, people going to bladders. I was accompanied by this young man, dark hair, very muscular, and I was given a strong feeling this was some type of military personnel. And they had some type of insignia on this shirt they were wearing, shorter sleeves, dark blue. Walked me through there, walked me through several different corridors. These were not corridors that were like carved out of rock. This was different. This was as though they had actually implanted some kind of metal walls in there. So it was almost as though you would look at the one main carved out room, and then there were tunnels that had been reinforced with metal, very shiny, and you would walk through them to different areas. That was an amazing experience, again, because there were no alien beings. This was only human beings that I saw in this particular experience. It was a short experience, and I was given some feeling that there was going to be an invitation for me to participate. The impression that I had is that this may well have been some of our people, human beings, perhaps military, that were working with experienced abductees, that were going to bring them into a participation with whoever is actually studying this in a large way from a military standpoint, a governmental standpoint, and it felt like I had touched on something like that. But because I did not react, I reacted with some fear. I was jolted. The situation terminated very quickly. I was very amazed that I did not want it to terminate, and one of the other remarkable things is that what convinces me that this was strictly a human encounter, and probably military, is that they used a device that had to render me unconscious, that was an audible device. Several of these fellows put headphones on, and then they turned this device on, and it rendered me unconscious. It was some type of actual technology, physical technology, that I'd never seen before, and it much more like what we might have as human beings. I have also found myself, another experience, being in what would have looked like a typical airport, like John Wayne Airport or the Long Beach Airport, standing inside one of the buildings looking out onto a runway. Now, I don't know if this was a projection given to me, I don't know, but what I saw was, I saw several different kinds of crafts coming and going. I saw human beings interacting with several different species, and I saw several different crafts coming and going. I do not know in this instance if this was something that was projected into my mind as a possibility. It did not have the same tangible quality like when I was underground. That felt as real could be. I'm not quite sure what this one was, but I did indeed see an interaction between human species and alien species. Okay, physical effects. These are some of the physical effects that I have experienced over the years with this. I've had my only scarring. I understand that a lot of people have bruises and scoop marks. That's not happened to me. But what has happened is I have awakened certainly to find many scars across my forearms, very thin hair-like scars that after 3 or 4 days disappear entirely. And at any given time there could probably be a couple dozen of them in the morning, and then they're gone within 2 or 3 days with no explanation of what those are. I have had various episodes of bleeding from my ears, episodes of bleeding from my sinus, waking up in blood for no explanation, with nothing wrong, gone to the doctor, nothing wrong with my ears, nothing wrong with my sinuses. And I went through a long series of that, probably about 10 years ago, quite a bit of that. I found myself awake in unusual locations. I don't know what the term is, but I do not have that sleep paralysis. I don't sleepwalk, but I have indeed awakened within my home in different locations. I suffered insomnia, a tremendous fear of going to bed over the years because of fear of something happening to me at night. I've had a sensation that contact was going to take place. I have heard on numerous occasions a humming, an actual humming I can hear. This is an audible sound I can hear. And it's happened before I've been going to bed, and before contacts, whatever this is, has happened, I've actually heard some humming. And on some occasions I've heard a clicking sound. For some reason, the clicking sound was particularly unnerving to me. I'm not quite sure why, but it was. I have also had an amazing increase in I say precognitive ability. When I know someone's going to call, I know what someone's going to say. I go to the store, I know what someone wants from the store, I bring it back, I say that's exactly what I want. It's happening more and more, quite a bit, beyond a reasonable, normal, what you would expect normally to happen. Interesting nerve damage. One of the things that has repeatedly happened over the years, particularly earlier, not so much now, is that you always have, when you're going through a lot of physical exams, and there's one of those gray entities assigned to keep you calm, and they do pressure points in your body, and the place they do the pressure points is right here. They do it on your wrist, and they do it particularly right here at the elbow. And I have many, many recollections of having this area pressed during these experiences. And so far, I've had 3 surgeries on this arm, and they're all nerve-related. There's no real explanation as to why it happened, but in this particular area, the ulnar nerve has started to deteriorate, and I was losing the ability to move my hand. And the doctor, they had to go in and open up my arm and move it around. And it's quite interesting to me, very curious, no proof certainly, but curious about the fact that so many, many times there has been in these experiences somebody holding and pressing this spot, and that's the very nerve that had to be corrected because it was dying. Later on, there was nerve damage up here. I've got some damage in my hands, and I've had 3 surgeries so far on the nerves on this right arm. And it's the right arm that has been, in these experiences, appears to have been tampered with somehow. The other thing is I did have a specific experience of having recollection of being in a room and having, being in a chair that had wide arms stretched back, almost like a cross, with my arms being strapped back, and having them implant something in my right hand, several implants on an occasion. That next day, when I came to, I indeed have a big lump at the base of one of my fingers that has never, I have not talked to Dr. Roger Lear, who does this work and removes alleged implants, and at some point in time he's going to take a look at this also. I haven't had it x-rayed, but it did appear immediately after this experience that I recalled. Strangely enough, it was funny that there was somebody at the meeting last week, I had described that, and he came right up to me, showed me his hand. He had the exact same one, the exact same place. I take that right, so his left hand, but it was the same place as mine on his left hand. He hadn't had his looked at yet either. Emotional, feeling of being watched. These are things that I'd never had. These are very strange feelings. I moved, after my first experience in Sedona, I was obsessed with moving to the Southwest. A few months later, I flew to Santa Fe, New Mexico, was so taken with it and its wide expanses of, open land. I went back to California, packed up in 9 weeks, got in my car with my little critters and drove out to New Mexico and moved there. Not quite sure why I was doing it, but once I got to Sedona, or rather got to Santa Fe, New Mexico, I had a tremendous increase in the number of experiences happening. I was oftentimes compelled to go outside in the middle of the night, out on the street. Certainly I would have an experience. I took long, long rides. There was a lot more missing time there. I suddenly had this paranoia about being watched, and it was very, very uncomfortable times for me, very disturbing times for me. And the dreams of destruction and catastrophe began to happen. One of the things that they had alluded to in these experiences is how what's going to happen to the planet and the Earth, and what my role will be in how I will participate with humans and other beings in helping to preserve this. And I understand later on this is a fairly common phenomenon in these contact experiences. Methods of contact. As I said before, sometimes it appears as a real dream, but you wake up from this, you're sleeping, you're under the covers, it's a normal sense, but you have a haunting feeling. that something interrupted your dream state, something contacted you. And of course, the dream is of alien in nature. It's very similar. It's of contact, all of that. But you feel as though you were actually sleeping in your bed and that you were interrupted somehow. That your dream state, your mind, your brain was affected by some outside source. You feel that when you wake up, although you actually feel like you never left the bed. There's a sense, and certainly been a number of occasions, a couple of very strange ones, where I had a beam of light come into my bedroom, fully conscious, awake, standing up just like this. Boom! Outside the window, I see a flash of light. Boom! It's into my room, and I'm looking at it. My dog's on the bed, absolutely hysterical, whining. Next thing I know, I decide I'm going to get in bed and pull the covers over my head. Not rational, but that was my reaction, and I'm out. There has been one of the really surprising things for me was when I saw there was one occasion where I actually recalled this beam of light and being pulled into this light, and strange but true, my memory tells me that the wall opened up and I moved on this beam of light up into the bottom of a ship. That is the recollection. Again, no proof that this happened, but that is the recollection. And the light was very curious in that there was very tiny little, what looked like little metallic particles inside of this foggy, misty blue light. Later on, years later, as I began to review some of the materials, I went over 100 cases of barbers after I had done my cataloging, only to find on a number of occasions people describing the exact same light, the color, the mist, and the metal particles in it, which was very, very shocking to me to read that somewhere else. I do feel there's other feelings that, like I say, the physical, being actually physically transported on this light somehow. Sometimes it's just a matter of waking up and I feel like I'm looking in a room here and that this room is a craft. It's round. It appears to be a craft. I've never seen anybody driving it. I've never seen any propulsion systems, nothing like that. But it's a big round type room with the ceiling all with almost like sometimes you see instrument panels along the center of the wall. Here's another phenomenon that's very interesting, and that's the repeating digits. I didn't know anything about this with anybody else, but I have repeating digits. I have 2 of them that come. I get the 4 ones, the 3 ones, or 4s. I get 3 4s. Now, when these things happen, what you see is somehow it happens on digital clocks, and you'll be drawn to it. It happens when I'm working at the computer, I'm looking at the clock, I'm in the car, it doesn't matter. Boom, you're drawn, and it's 111. You're drawn 1111, 4 ones. I didn't know anything about this phenomenon either, that anybody else was experiencing. It turns out there is a huge number of people experiencing this. My returns, when I return, it's almost always 444 when I come back on the clock. I don't know what that means. I get a sense that there's a downloading. I get a feeling. I could be working at work at the computer at the law firm, and all of a sudden, everything stops. I look at the 111. When that happens, I'm frozen in time, almost for a moment, as I look at this thing. And I don't move, everything stops. And it's almost as though there's a brief few minutes of like information. I'm being tapped, something's happening to me in that moment. It's very brief indeed, but it almost feels like there's some type of external contact being made in some level that stops everything I'm doing, and it's always when these digits appear. It turns out later on, I find out this is a worldwide phenomenon with people who have these anomalous experiences. Again, I described some of the awake missing time. Unusual balls of light, shafts of light I've seen that have come into my room fully awake. I saw a UFO when I was 16 with a boyfriend driving in a rural, remote area in Michigan. We were awake, both of us together. The ship was very low as a craft. It was a saucer-type craft. We saw it, I don't know, it was extremely low and very large. And when I say low, I'm not good at guessing this, but let's say 1,000 feet over us, 750, 1,000 feet, very low, with different lights underneath we saw. I thought that was it. Later on, I did do a regression on it that is one of the ones I did a regression on, only to find there was a whole lot more that happened on that experience. Mission is a reoccurring theme that keeps coming, is that the mission, and I have been led to believe by these contacts, whatever they are, that I am to act as an intermediary, that I am to be sort of a calmer of other humans when they arrive in a big way. They suggest they will arrive in a big way after a catastrophe hits the planet. When we're very vulnerable, they will come onto the planet. It has been repeatedly shown to me and suggested that this is going to be an asteroid hitting the planet. That's what I've been shown again and again. And when that happens, that they step in at that time, and that a number of us have been trained somehow to interact with other humans and supposedly let them know this is all okay, you know, whatever's happening. And it's really not okay. None of it's okay. It's my book. All communication is telepathic. I've seen 3 different types of crafts. I've seen the saucer type, a cigar shaped with windows in the front and lights coming out the front. I've seen the boomerang with a mothership and small other little ships. The slideshows I've seen, and holograms. I had an occasion where I was very, very upset, and it was a turning point for me where I realized I stopped being a victim when I recognized that they sort of coveted our emotional makeup on some level, because these species, several of them, are very, very evolved out, or perhaps they never developed the emotional dimension. The emotional dimension can distort information, certainly, but it can also enhance experience. It can bring in colors, scents, sounds. So if it's in a balanced and proper way, the combination of left and right brain can produce a tremendous amount of information that one alone will not. And so I have got a sense that they somewhat covet this, so that a lot of the interaction has to do with testing humans, and they set up false scenarios, and they're continually testing us to see where we're at emotionally, how we react to things. It's no different than we do when we put animals, rats in a maze, we test. We do the same thing, so it's not very far-fetched what they might be doing. Anyway, in this particular experience, I was trying to describe the fact that emotions were not something that was flat, black and white. I was trying to describe hologram. I couldn't get the word in the experience, and a hologram popped up over the table, and I was again with that insectoid being across the table from me, and there was this hologram, and I was trying to say yes. And I realized when I walked away from that experience, or I came back, whatever this experience was, I realized that whatever was going on, perhaps I wasn't necessarily the lesser of the species. This experience, whatever it is, makes you, it tends to, promote a victim feeling, which doesn't work for me at all. I'm not a victim, but it tends to promote that feeling, and it also gives you an overall sense that we are the weaker of the species. If this is actual interaction going on with non-terrestrial beings, there's a possibility that they are not superior in every way. And I realized this at that experience. I realized they may actually have some degree of envy over our emotional nature. They're trying to comprehend it, trying to manipulate it, trying to understand it because they don't possess it. So it gave me a little strength, and I realized maybe they're not all powerful. There's actually 7 beings that I've seen. There's only 6 pictures here. I really can count. And I'll describe the others. You see the gray being, the insectoid being, my depiction of the reptilian. We've got the tall white. And what we've got on the other side is we've got one that has repeatedly shown up through my life during those 15 years was a child. And it was a child that appeared to be human, but also not human. And she continually, in my experiences, I am holding her. I'm feeling great, great love for her. Her skin is in a very poor condition. She has very, very thin blondish hair. She has black eyes, but there's a blue ring around the eyes, and there is some white in them. Her nose is very tiny in her mouth. Very, very sad, depressed feeling about her. And her skin was very bad. Years later, this adult female came out in one of my experiences, stood beside me in this experience, touched my shoulder, and looked down at me. The most remarkable feeling is that I felt incredible, overwhelming, all-encompassing love for this particular female. And I feel that the young female and the adult female were the same. She appeared probably 10, 15 years later, the adult. They wear these types of very nondescript shifts on them. There's a state of depression, a sense of captivity about them. And it's a very sad feeling. But I found myself very emotionally moved with a great deal of love for this particular being. Now, I was led to believe in some of the interactions that this particular being was a result of some of the genetic material that they had removed from my body, my eggs, for example. That they had taken something from my body and in vitro created this hybrid. There's no proof to that. I'm not telling you that I believe that. I'm just telling you these experiences have pointed in that direction. They've wanted me to believe that. Very robotic, the gray acts in unison with other grays, does not seem to employ any kind of independent intention, volition of its own, non-responsive, doesn't interact, very mechanical. The skin is almost looks like it could be a suit covering, it could be like a plastic outer to the body, it's very leathery. They do all the medical testing. This is one of the type of beings that is assigned to hold your arm and keep you calm. And I don't know how you know, but somehow there is a sexes. There's a female and a male in all these species. I don't know how we know that. You really can't see it or tell it, but you sense it. The ones that hold the arm are always females. You don't sense any emotional dimension to them at all. And this is the ones that put their face next to you, and they seem to be able to look into your eyes and pick up some kind of information. The insectoid conducts all of the intellectual and mental testing and instruction. Again, they seem to have some affinity for human beings, some interest, affinity. They take some kind of pride. There's a greater dimension to them. There's no gesture physical, there's no facial gestures, but you feel a sense of camaraderie, emotion from them, a definite different emotional makeup with them. I've only seen one, the same one. There's no name, there's nothing to know that, but it's the same one I've seen again and again. This is interesting. I was in Mexico recently, and that's my elbow there. And this was a large iguana, a very large iguana that somebody was carrying around at the hotel, and probably about 5 feet long, and I had this iguana placed around my shoulder. And later on, when I looked at the picture, I thought, that's very interesting, because that looks like their skin to me. And you notice the mouth, there's a similarity in the mouth, a similarity in the nose of the drawing that I have. So there's a real sense of reptilian about this creature. The skin color is similar, and the actual texture of the skin you can see in this lizard was very similar to the skin. It's not depicted that well in my picture. The other thing with the reptilian is, again, they're very menacing, very, very menacing, maybe 6.5 feet tall, very broad-shouldered. There was one standing outside that first day of the van that I couldn't look up and look at, and later on I had similar experiences, and I realized that that's what was standing in front of me. They have an ability to not allow you to even raise your head up so you can't look at it. That keeps you more controllable. The more calm they can keep you, the more they can control you. They appeared to wear boots, and there's some type of a vest, a metal vest. I'm not sure what that is exactly, but it looks like it's some kind of a protective gear, something around their chest and their waist. You sense a very violent nature under there, a very short temper. They're not involved. They don't care about you. They have an odd, very, very nasty, odd odor to them. And they have the ability to kind of, they can affect your mental processes also. They have I don't know if it's a mind scan kind of thing, but they can sort of waver in front of you and keep you from looking up, and if you do, they can kind of distort themselves a little bit. But there are only like a few occasions I've interacted with them. I've never seen two together. This is the tall white. It is very analytical, very cerebral, very cold, has no affinity for human beings whatsoever. Actually, complete disregard, really, and has a sense of superiority, and really is very uncomfortable to be around, extremely uncomfortable. Is always directing the grays in their interactions. Again, this was the female child that I'd seen repeatedly. I even, interestingly enough, I had written poetry about her years ago, and I made no connection at the time. I kept having these experiences of seeing this child and holding this child, and at that time, it was prior to my experience in Sedona, so there was no way that I had a connection. I thought this was an alien connection, but I kept having this memory of this child, holding her and being so connected to her, and actually in my mind making some kind of a commitment to this child. And later on, of course, as I move into these experiences, I related, and wait a minute, this is one and the same here. That's very interesting. And the time frame worked out to that she indeed, when I saw her as an adult, she would have been, it would have matched the time that I had seen. The number of years had gone by since I'd seen her as a child. Another being that I've seen is a transparent white and blue being. They're very unusual. I haven't got a drawing of this. They do not do physical exams. I've had a couple of interactions there, and these are just in the last 3 years. Prior to that time, I'd only had contacts that I'd seen with the insectoid, the gray, and the insectoid, the gray, and the tall white, and slowly more of these have happened till there's been about 7 now. This blue and white is very transparent, and they also appear to be very they have some emotional dimension to them. They definitely do. They communicate also by verbal clicking sounds. It's an actual audible sound. They do the telepathy, but there's an actual audible sound. With this experience, there's been a couple of times I've interacted with them. They are looking for information about other species. They have no interest in me. That was very unusual. And finally, I've had what I would call a drive-by light beams, and I've had one experience, only one, in my bedroom in 2006 with this ball of light that was exploded outside my window, moved through the window, and was right there at the end of my bed. And as it did, out popped several of these very strange light beings, and with joints on the opposite. And I was awake when this one happened, and then I went out. But I was initially awake when the ball of light came into my room. And the elbows and everything was facing the opposite direction. My only recollection of this is of the covers being pulled back and them absolutely mesmerized by my joints, my hands, my arms, and my legs, and the way that they were constructed. There was no abduction or any other interaction with this. Anyway, the message for me is 2012 and 2017 repeatedly. Those are going to be two very important stages on the planet. I've been repeatedly given direction to live off-grid. I have been obsessed with buying a piece of land out of California and indeed doing just that, growing my own. I'm an amateur herbalist and into alternative health care, and so that's been a big focus, buying a piece of land, and I'm going to go with it. I'm comfortable. I could do that, not just because of these experiences. It's something I would enjoy, but strangely enough, this is where it originated from. Living with this, if anybody has these kinds of experiences, the good news is that you can find a way to live with it. I can't say that it's necessarily integrated into my daily life. It's pretty quiet. I mean, around our circles, I will reveal this more and more. But my hypothesis ultimately is something's happening. We're indeed being contacted. I do believe there are other life forces and species interacting with the planet. I think there's enough physical evidence to prove, certainly by many researchers out there, that crafts have landed here, have been here. There's a lot of other physical activity unrelated to this phenomenon. Somebody's in those crafts. Somebody's created them. Something's behind it. So I do indeed believe that there's experiences taking place. I believe these are life forms. I'm not sure Whether they're originating on the planet, they're interdimensional, I'm not sure of how this is happening, but I know something is happening and it's worthy of investigation. So I don't know. That's about it for me.
All right.